It's 6:30 p.m. and I will call the regular meeting of the San Gabriel City Council to order. First, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and it'll be led by Councilmember Costanzo.
If everyone would please stand, place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pooh?
Here.
Vice Mayor Menchaca?
Here.
Councilmember Costanzo?
Here.
Councilmember Harrington?
Here.
Do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Leal?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Seeing no objection, it is so ordered. Approval of agenda order. Does any member of the council?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and second. Any objection? Seeing none. Agenda order is approved, and we'll move on to presentations.
First presentation is the ceremonial swearing in of new Fire Captain Eric Kalisher. Presentation will be made by Interim Fire Chief Stephen Wallace, and oath will be administered by Chief City Clerk Sharon Clark.
Good evening, Mayor Pooh, honorable members of the council. It's once again my pleasure to come up here and introduce our newest promoted member of the fire department. Tonight I'm going to introduce you to our new fire captain, Eric Kalisher. Eric hails from Huntington Beach and has served the city of San Gabriel for the last 16 years. He holds a BA from Cal State Long Beach, is a graduate of the prestigious Los Angeles Fire Department and West Point Leadership Academy, and also the Los Angeles Area Fire Chiefs Captains Academy. Captain Kalisher is both past president and past vice president of the Firefighters Association, is a licensed paramedic, and previously held assignments on the Utah Regional Task Force and the Verdugo Arson Task Force. Back on March 1st of this year, Eric was assigned as a provisional captain, in which he served very well, and on October 1st was appointed and promoted to permanent fire captain. He will be assigned to Station 52 on the B shift. So tonight, Eric is joined by his wife Jen, his son Cole, daughter Charlotte, and they will all be pinning his badge. So please join me in welcoming Eric Kalisher.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Eric Kalisher,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I enter into this obligation freely
that I enter into this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Kalisher. If I could respectfully ask the council to come down for a picture. Eric has
Absolutely.
asked for that.
Everyone ready? Look this way, please. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Say any words?
I would. Mayor, council members, city manager, first off, I just want to tell you how blessed I am to be able to be standing here in front of you and taking on this new position. This is something that I've worked for many years, and it's been a long, hard road for me, and I'm so grateful and blessed to have finally been able to attain this. But more importantly, I want to give a few thanks to the people who've really made an impact in my life. The first is going to be my wife, Jen. She stuck with me through thick and thin, and has been on this roller coaster with me, and she's been my cheerleader throughout the entire process. So I thank her. I thank our kids for understanding Daddy's work, that I'm oftentimes away from them for several days at a time, and they're able to understand that and be supportive of me. I want to thank my parents, my dad and Gina, and my mother, who's looking down from heaven. I know she is. I also want to thank Chief Wallace for giving me this opportunity and having the faith and trust in me to move me into this position. I'd like to thank Dave Milligan for the countless hours of time, studying, and preparation that's led me to this position. And I want to thank all the guys at this fire department who've been a support system and who've made me successful this far. So thank you.
That's great. Congratulations, Captain Kalischer. Next presentation, please.
Next presentation is Active San Gabriel Valley Open Streets event. Presentation will be made by Active San Gabriel Special Programs Director Wesley Rudeman.
Good evening, Mary Pooh and council members. My name is Andrew Yet. Wes couldn't make it today. He's at a conference. But today, oh, thank you. Okay, so just scroll down. Okay, got it. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for having me. And so I'm just going over some of the findings from 626 Golden Streets. So throughout the event, back in March, we had surveys done with businesses as well as participants. I believe we surveyed about 9 or 10 of the immediate businesses on the route and about 320 or so participants during the event. And so you may recognize that location. It's just down the street from here. And so for the event, we had over 300 volunteers with over 12 organizations that participated in assisting with volunteers and staffing with the tables and booths. We held over 15 trainings and orientations for these volunteers. And so here's some of the survey data. What are the main reasons you came to 626 Golden Streets? And so a lot of them were, exercise, exploring the neighborhood, sounded like fun. So nothing out of the ordinary. We expected people to come out to really enjoy the open streets that day. And was this your first time visiting any of the following communities? So surprisingly, over 50% of the participants surveyed, it was their first time in the city of San Gabriel. So that's really cool for the city. I mean, these are new customers for a lot of the businesses. These are new people that discovered the San Gabriel, the downtown Mission district for the first time. And with the participant survey, we found that 99% of them want something like this to happen again in the San Gabriel Valley. Not surprisingly. And 85.3% plan to buy food or drink along the event route. And that may be the reason why a lot of the businesses were really happy about the event. About 54% of the people attended their first Open Streets event at Golden Streets here in Mission to Mission. And 28% share that they would be more likely to use public transit for 626 Golden Streets. So 96% of the businesses, so this includes all the businesses on the route, including the 9 businesses here in San Gabriel. We do have a lot more businesses along Main Street in Alhambra, but overall in San Gabriel, it reflects what they wrote down on the survey as well. So 96% of the businesses surveyed indicated that they would like to see the event return. to the city of San Gabriel, Alhambra, and South Pasadena in the near future. Of these 92%, they indicated they would like to see more open streets on an annual basis. So I don't know if that's something our cities can do in the future, having it once a year, but people definitely are hungry for it. When asked whether they believe the event brings additional recognition to their products or services, and this is for the businesses, 90% of the respondents said yes. Local businesses were also asked on the rank on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most positive and 1 being the least positive, what effect they believe the event has on their business. And the average score was 4.1, and on their community, 4.4. And when asked if they thought the community would benefit from future transportation improvements for biking, walking, or using public transit, 92% responded yes. 4% no, 4% I don't know. So this is reflective of all the participants along the route that we survey, not just in San Gabriel, but also with the participants in Alhambra and South Pasadena. And so that's just a sampling of some of the data that we pulled from the report. I can forward the report to the council members and the staff, which has much more detailed information about demographics, how they got to the event, etc. But a heartfelt thank you from Active San Gabriel Valley for the city of San Gabriel in participating in the event with Alhambra and South Pasadena. It was a wonderful event, and it was one of the best routes we've done. And a lot of people have been asking us, when are we going to do it again? When are we going to do it again? So next RFP, I hope San Gabriel will jump on board and maybe participate and join with us to do this event again in the near future. And just a quick plug, our next one will be on October 26th. So next Saturday on October 26th in El Monte and South El Monte. Slightly shorter, but it'll be Halloween themed. And then in April of next year, we're going to be having it in Laverne, San Dimas, and Pomona. And then later that year, we're going to be closing down the 110 freeway between Highland Park and South Pasadena. So definitely a lot of cool events in the works, but hopefully in the next year we'll have San Gabriel in the lineup again. But today I did bring just a little token of gratitude for the city of San Gabriel.
Oh, wow.
It's the same picture from the first page, but
It's a fantastic picture.
thank you.
Yeah, and actually, would you mind going up to take a photo with this? I don't know if Jonathan can capture it for us too. Yeah. So I want to say, thank you very much for coming back and bringing us this information, because I know like a lot of community members who had a really great time at the event. I biked, to South Pasadena early in the morning, and quickly learned that it's actually uphill the whole way from here to South Pass.
And it was
Luckily-
raining too.
Yeah, and I also learned that I just need a better bike. So it was a great event, and I think, speaking for myself, and I think Vice Mayor Machak was also there, I think we would be absolutely supportive of having another Ciclavia type event here involving San Gabriel, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I had a great time also. I went the opposite direction, from South Pass to San Gabriel. I went to each of the hubs, and I thought it was a great event. I was just a little surprised with the stats on people never being in San Gabriel before.
Right,
but
I was surprised too. But
Yeah.
I guess these are very regional events, so we bring people all over the San Gabriel Valley. So there's actually statistics in the report too about where they're coming from.
I was going to ask you if you can maybe send that along, because I like to drill down to.
Right. I believe about half are from the San Gabriel Valley. So that's what's surprising to me, that in the San Gabriel Valley, but haven't been to San Gabriel. But a lot of them are from LA and the South Bay area, also South LA. So it's a big regional event.
Okay, and then also Councilmember Harrington was there too. So.
And I did ride both ways as well, and
Right.
I think my bike must be good because it was that difficult.
Yeah.
I was only able to ride to Alhambra, or the border of Alhambra, and then I have to go back to work. So we rarely get to do the route. But From the photos, it looked amazing. I was able to go to San Gabriel, and it was a lot of fun. But definitely, thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Everyone, please just slide this way a bit, please. Everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let me get one more. And here we go. We're good. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, great. Next, we have public comment.
This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of interest that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the San Gabriel City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. In an effort to provide everyone with an opportunity to speak tonight, please be aware that all public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will receive a 30-second warning as you approach the end of your time. As a reminder, please be respectful of all speakers regardless of the position they take on any items. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
All right, thank you, Sharon. We have one speaker's request card so far. It's Deborah Kilgore.
Hello, my name is Debbie Kilgore. I was at the meeting on September 17th regarding the property called Arroyo Village, which is at 235 South Arroyo Drive. I have some concerns about the property, and I mentioned that, but I'm also here regarding the MND notice that was sent out to people. It was extended to the 31st, but that was after a meeting we had, myself and two residents of Alhambra that were present at the meeting. Just to let you know, the property was first in 2005 with 75 units. It has now gone from 2013 to 46. It is in 2015 it's 41. The notice asked people to read this mitigated negative declaration, and I want to show you the pages that this review was. There are 826 pages I came home with. One of the things that I'm really concerned that the planning department did on the day the notice came out, which I received approximately the 9th of September until September 24th, the plans on the report here were from 2013, which was 1 to 3 bedrooms. I have it downloaded on my computer as the date I did it. It wasn't done till September 24th, a day before 3 of us had a meeting with the community director, the planning manager, and the planner at the time. So the plans presented at that time to review this were not the correct plans, and that's really wrong because the plans that are sent out are from 2015 to 2017 and additional studies that were done this year. Also, one of the things is the day we had the meeting, there was a staff report regarding this program, 133 pages that were sent to the Historical Commission. We weren't even told about it. And this committee, they put on a special meeting that was posted on October 4th for a meeting that was on October 9th, a special meeting. The main topic was regarding this property. So I was really concerned. At the meeting, they asked for our emails, our names, addresses to be contacted with, and they did not notice any of us regarding this property. And so they were not up to date on this, and they should have been. They're training us for the planning department. They work for this city, and that was very disappointing. And a lot of people don't realize there are 3 properties that are R1 property from Alhambra that are included in this. So I want people to be aware that things are not always what they should be. I also have a report of an email that was sent to Tracy Steinkruger, who is the manager, on March 17th, or 2017, about all the resolutions they have. I want to know if those resolutions have even been addressed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Kilgore. Smith? Sorry. Is there any other member of the public who would like to address the San Gabriel City Council? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. It's okay. Next item is the consent calendar.
All items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine, and recommendations will be approved in one motion unless a member of the City Council or audience requests separate discussion.
Okay, so anybody who... I would like to pull...
The security plan wasn't necessary this time. So those are the differences from what's usual. But a big change is the agreement to not serve or drink alcohol outside.
I see. So their event insurance will cover this event as well?
We're listed as an additional insured and on their policy, and the policy went somewhere into 2020. So it doesn't, it's not event-specific insurance.
It's just a general liability
We just
insurance?
got a form, the standard insurance form that says we're additional insured and our policy is good for
Because
someday
normally
through
for
2020.
events, you can buy special event insurance, for the event. We do that for our own events as well. It's
But
not
the
that
policy,
expensive.
We pulled the form, and the policy wasn't for a date of an event. It was for their duration of their term, which I presume is a year, but the end date was in 2020 somewhere.
But again, in that case too, that's Ogopogo's insurance, right?
Yes.
And this is an FFA event. Is that correct?
It's a what?
An FFA event?
Yeah.
So again, I want to see that there's some other party responsible for everything, and that's the condition that's lacking from these list of conditions, that such and such. So if it's FFA, I want to say that FFA should be responsible for the serving of alcohol, making sure no minors or whatever, because we are closing the street, and that they would be responsible for all any liability.
Would you require an
I would.
insurance policy or just an
Yeah.
agreement form signed that they will assume responsibility?
I think insurance is actually, a better idea too. Event insurance is like $200, something like that, oftentimes, if you go to the right carrier.
All right, we can add that as a term. I'm just not familiar with how that works.
Okay. So let's see, when is this event proposed to be? November 2nd? Yeah, but it's before our next meeting. No, I want to move approval conditioned upon satisfying those requirements of event insurance by the organizer, and a condition that, along the same lines as what we've had in other the other permits for Ogopogo, but in this case that FFA would be fully responsible for any liability or other incidents.
Okay, I just want to confirm then that you are okay dropping police department approval of a security plan?
I mean, in a way, I kind of don't see why we shouldn't. Why shouldn't we approve the security plan?
Okay.
I mean, in a way, there's a heightened sense of need for caution if many of the city employees are going to be attending an event as well, right? I mean, so I don't see why we should have any different process.
Okay, we'll add that
It
condition
is a
as well.
private event. I mean, FFA is not a city department or organization. It's a the labor organization.
Okay, we'll add those terms.
All right, thank you. So I will move approval of D and E, subject to the conditions on item E.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and seconds go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Next item, please.
Next item, public hearing. There are none tonight, which brings us to new business. Item A is consideration of resolutions relating to San Gabriel's general municipal election to be held on March 3rd, 2020, including placing a measure enacting an ordinance for a transactions and use tax on the March 2020 ballot. Presentation will be made by City Manager Mark Lazaretto and myself. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the item before you tonight calls San Gabriel's next general municipal election to be held in March 2020. As part of that process, there are 4 resolutions that need to be approved. The first calls the election and places the ordinance for the voters' approval, and City Manager will be elaborating more on that part of it. The next part of the item requests the Board of Supervisors to consolidate, administer, manage, and oversee the election. The next resolution adopts regulations for candidate statements, and the last provides for rebuttal arguments relating to the ballot measure. I did want to clarify that in the staff report it mentions that council needs to adopt by a 2/3 vote. That actually only applies to the first resolution because of the ordinance putting a tax measure out to the voters. And I'm available for any questions. Actually, let's have Mark go ahead and do his part first, and then we can both answer questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. The only thing I was going to add is that we do have folks in the audience from Imprenta Communications, but they helped in as well as FM3, the company that put together the polling, and that's how we came up with the language that is suggested for the ballot initiative. The ballot initiative is going to be the 3/4 cent sales tax, which is technically a transaction and use tax, which would be put before the voters, and it would require a 50% plus 1 voting in order to be enacted. We anticipate about $3 million a year that will be generated from that. As you all know, that would be mostly a out-of-town tax because of the nature of our tax base, that we have a lot of folks that buy and shop and spend in our restaurants. It doesn't go on groceries. I want the public to be aware of that groceries are not taxable items, so all of the, or majority of your food purchases are not subject to that. The big thing that would be local would be things like gas. But I also want to point out that cities like Pasadena already have this tax in place, so we're not any less competitive if this is to be enacted. We do have cities like Alhambra and Duarte, Monrovia, who are all enacting or putting these same ballot initiatives before the voters. And the biggest thing that I'll end on is that the cap, as you all know, for sales tax in California is 10.25%. Right now, we are 0.75 cents away from that cap. We receive from all of the taxes that we get as a city, from that all of our residents pay, we receive about 17 cents on the dollar that the city of San Gabriel residents pay. So when they shop or dine anywhere in the area, we receive only 17 cents on the dollar back. And all of those sources are all very much restricted. They're good sources, but restricted. So things like the homeless spending, streets and roads, and some of the other measures, we are very restricted in how we're able to spend those. So one of the advantages of putting this tax on and sort of taxing ourselves would be 100% of it stays local, and we would be able to do that before the county came through, or AQMD, both of whom are looking at future measures, and captured all of that tax, in which case we would not have any cap room to put taxes on ourselves in the future. So while I'm loath to want to support taxes, I think this is something that, as the council and the polling suggested, is something that is appropriate to consider at this time. The other thing I would point out is, perhaps before you vote, there is a section in the last resolution, which is 19-52. That's the resolution number. Section 1 lays out how we would prepare the arguments for that measure. Council has the first right of refusal, so to speak. There's a hierarchy. And one of the allowances is to adopt or to nominate 2 council members to participate in writing that. So that would be appropriate to have that discussion before we're voting so that we can decide, A, if council is going to take advantage of that, and then B, which 2 of the members of the council would be then authoring that. And that would be the end. I'd be happy to answer any questions as Sharon, as well as our consultant.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? Start. Vice Mayor Machaka?
Yeah, real quick. This question is for Ron and his team. Would you like to come up?
Evening, Council.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for coming. So I'm looking at the language for the ballot measure. It's entitled San Gabriel Community Services Infrastructure Protection Measure. And it goes on and on about, I feel like it's a little excessive, like the sky's falling and all. You know, I'm just wondering, has this language been used with other cities? How effective has it been? It just seems so long and just so, you know, guys, just like the sky's falling, so you better do it or else. And,
Right.
you know, I'm not quite sure if that comes across, if that's the right messaging.
Right.
I wish we could say we better do it or else, you know, we got AQMD and LA County, and I know part of that will probably be part of, the outreach efforts and trying to educate, but realistically, this is what people are going to see in the beginning, or it might be the only thing they see, despite all our efforts. And so I just wanted to kind of get, you know, you're the expert, but at first glance, I wasn't pleased with it. I just felt like we
Sure.
could do better. So
Right.
help me out here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question and needs to be clarified a little bit of the intent and purpose of when you see a ballot initiative, the technical language of it. I mean, there are certain constraints that are legal where you want to be accurate. So that's why these things are very inclusive in terms of how they're described. If you look at the ballot for state initiative, so forth, it's like these very long, elaborate things so to make sure that everything is covered under that. But I think you bring up another point which is critically important, and that is how to message the issue, right? All of the things laid out in that long laundry list of issues, how it's described, are not how we're going to message this thing. And one of the things we did prior to, is, as the city manager alluded to, is going out in the community, talking to folks, doing some initial polling and research. And I know we have a session with some folks tomorrow, but the real issue that we described is going to be very, very, very simple. And I think what has risen to the top is making an investment in the city. All the money stays here, but more importantly, that money will go towards public safety and basic infrastructure of the city, and keeping that message very simple. So I think the point is that how we message the initiative is not reflected in all the language in the ballot language. Because obviously, as you all know, you are all elected officials. If you put that out there, no one's going to be able to grapple with what this is, right? And I think we are not campaign consultants for or against any measure. Our job is to educate people, so we have to be fairly broad in terms of how we educate them and say, look, this is what it could address. These are the limitations, so forth. Did that answer this question? I guess I want to say the main point is messaging versus what's on that ballot initiative are very different.
Have you used the same language in other cities, and how effective have they been? Because other cities, I think Arcadia just passed theirs.
They're very similar. I mean, we've been very consistent in how they describe theirs and how we describe theirs. I think, Mark, did you want to add something? Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%. The Burbank, Pasadena, Arcadia is very similar to this language, because these are the kinds of items that folks are close to their heart when they see. So this is what resonated. As Ron said, this is something that we used during our initial polling to find out whether a ballot initiative is something that could be successful or not. from here on out, it's just going to be messaging with all education and outreach.
And all those cities you mentioned passed it.
Correct. And by very wide margins. For example, Arcadia was 60-something% when 50% was what they needed.
Okay.
And I will say these are realistic items that the money will be spent on. Or conversely, with our budgetary situation, these are the areas that we would be looking as a community and as a council and as a staff that we would have to look at cutting services in order to make our budget where it would need to be. So this is an accurate picture. We do have to be broad, because if we're very narrow, then it would be considered not a general tax, it would be a specific tax, and then it would require a 66 2/3% vote. So that's why it has to include everything that we think we'll spend it on, plus the language about being general services. It's kind of all encompassing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think my comment on that too is maybe in the opposite direction, because I wanted to add language to the title, because as Ron just mentioned, public safety is such an important priority and such an important part of the measure, important part of our city services generally. You know, I was wondering if we would consider adding the words public safety so that it said San Gabriel Public Safety Community Services Infrastructure Protection Measure.
I think one of the things that your city manager mentioned, and I tried to answer it in that way, there are the legal requirements, and then there are how we message, right? And I think that's why the other cities have adopted very similar language, because it cannot be earmarked in any way. And you don't want to have a unnecessary legal challenge saying that people were under the impression that this money is going to go towards X or Y. But
Do we think that would actually be true if we just add the words public? Because if we're saying,
Well,
for
I
me,
don't-
go ahead.
I don't know about that change specifically, but I do know that it is quite a dance because you want to indicate that this money is going to be put to specific purposes, but if you cross some kind of line which is not very well defined, then it could be considered a special tax, and suddenly we've got a higher voting requirement, and it really backfires. So as far as that particular change is concerned, I don't know if that it depends on
Crosses
where
the
in
line.
the ordinance I suppose you're sticking it. I mean, technically, this has got to say that it's going into the general fund for general purposes, and then there's a section that will say we intend to use it for these things.
This is just the title, you know. But did you want to respond to as well?
Please, just
Yeah.
one point of fact. It is exactly to the word, the number of words that we're allowed to have.
I
So
see.
if we add,
Right.
which I'm not saying we can't add words to, but we would have to substitute. So we'd have to find two words. If you added public safety, we'd have to find two words somewhere in that title. And it's inclusive of the title of the ballot measure. So the part we'd be adding it to includes that and is included in that number count.
Interesting.
Do slashes count as two words or one word?
Slashes count as two words, but
'Cause you have a lot of
as an
slashes
example,
there.
City of San Gabriel counts as one word.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're saying like repair streets and potholes, you could just say repair streets. I think potholes would be assumed there. I mean, I could see some words we could take out if we did, if making it say public safety didn't actually change the legal requirement to 66 as opposed to 50+1. It might make sense to add, I agree with Jason, it might make sense to add San Gabriel Public Safety Community Services Infrastructure Protection Measure.
Yeah.
Because we are listing those in here. We are listing public safety, both police and fire already.
Because actually, you know, the further complication is our community services department is called community services, and therefore, I mean, maybe this is having a different level of information or awareness. I almost wonder if it could be considered to be a special purpose then for community services specifically, you know, which does a lot of our community events, parks planning, that kind of thing, or you know, just for infrastructure, and so you know, even if we don't insert that language, I mean, I think you have that same kind of risk. So I don't know if it's maybe overhauling the title of it, you know, completely, but I do think that if we're going to say certain kinds of things, you know, putting public safety in there among the list is also important from a from an education standpoint, because then you're kind of saying,
Right.
it's what is it? 63% of our overall budget is police and fire, or higher.
Yeah.
Something close to that.
That's
65% of our overall budget. I was just talking with the mayor of West Covina. Theirs is 78. So I don't know how they run the rest of their city on 22%. But in any case,
I mean, I would defer to the city attorney and staff, but I will say from a messaging position, it's more consistent to have public safety in there, because we're going to be talking about public safety as the main reason, and it is a big part of the budget. So it's more accurate to probably reflect that.
Yeah, and looking at it, you're talking about the caption now specifically? San
Yeah,
Gabriel
just-
Community Services / Infrastructure Protection Measure?
just this.
Yeah, I don't see how that, I don't think that would, I guess if you keep adding new things, it becomes less of a special tax, right?
Yeah. But
Right. I mean, is there consensus to make that change to the title?
I believe you can. Oh, you were gonna-
No, I was just going to say, community services also kind of confuses me, because I think of our former Parks and Rec. Couldn't we just say city services, or is that too simple?
I was even thinking San Gabriel Safety Services Infrastructure Protection Measure. That way you're just saying safety in general. Just literally switch community for safety. San Gabriel Safety Services Infrastructure Protection Measure. 3 slashes, bam, bam, bam.
I don't have any legal problem with that.
That way we're not having to change the rest of the body.
Let me just get clarification. So infrastructure protection measure, doesn't that also include public works, our streets?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's, okay, so
So it's safety, services, and infrastructure.
services and infrastructure, so that would cover everything.
Pretty much everything we do.
Yeah.
Does it still cover
I agree with
senior
that.
services, youth
I
programs?
think that's a good change.
So is the change also to remove the slash, and so it says San Gabriel Safety Services and Infrastructure Protection Measure?
Does
That would
the
go ahead.
and count as a word? I mean, I just don't know how they're counting.
And will count as a word, but
But it's grammatically correct.
yeah,
What
let's
about
just-
youth and senior services, though? Is that covered in that?
Yeah,
too?
I think I'm going to be the stick in the mud and say we need something in that title that's general. And what we're saying, when I read it that way, it's safety, services, and infrastructure, and
Right.
it limits it to those two, rather than adding community as well. My 2 cents.
Or just
So as to
services,
say-
infrastructure, and safety. That way you're not saying safety services. Because community service is having the same thing that Julie was saying. So if we said services / infrastructure / safety protection measure, 'cause that way you're not confusing those two.
Right. I like that one better.
So can you reread what you're suggesting?
We take out the word community and say San Gabriel services / infrastructure / safety protection measure.
Okay, I have no problem with that either. The other comment I just wanted to, while had the floor, is on section 9 of the resolution, talks about that when the polls will be open. However, that we will be moving to the vote centers, and I wondered to the extent to which this is inconsistent with the way voting will be done in LA County at that time.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, that's why I actually added in the day of the election, because we will be moving to voting centers. However, the wording has not caught up with the new system yet, and I wanted to specify that on the day of the election that those would be the hours. We will be starting voting at various places up to 11 days before.
Okay. I guess the fact that voting is available
Polls
at a
being
broader,
general term.
more than what is stated here doesn't make it a conflict, at least. But yeah, I guess we'll need to, for all of our other, those kinds of resolutions.
The
or we
election
need-
code has not caught up to the new
election
wording
code is-
either yet.
That was my
Even
same
though
question.
a few different counties have now gone to the vote center model, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Those are my two questions, clarifications. Other, Councilmember Harrington.
I'm good. I'm just saying I'm good.
I'm good.
Oh, okay. Then, is there a motion to, do we want to, I guess, do we want to designate any of us to be on a subcommittee for this?
And the reason for the timing is that it starts tonight, and 15 days is when we have to write that.
We have to write it within 15 days.
It must be received by my office by October 29th.
And this is both the argument and...
Just the argument.
Okay.
If we receive an argument against, that will
Then
start a
we'll
new
vote.
timeline for rebuttals. If we don't, that wouldn't apply.
Okay. I'm willing to serve on this subcommittee.
I nominate you.
And I guess I will too, since it's probably appropriate for us to, as opposed to.
Right,
Yeah,
since they're...
because we're in the middle of an election, and we had an issue when I was on the school board that two members participated while they were running, and it's just not appropriate.
Yeah, that's a insightful comment.
That's why my hand didn't go up.
All right, so there's consensus then that Vice Mayor Menchaca and I will serve on this subcommittee if we approve this, the recommended action. Do we need to do any special motion as far as the ordinance is concerned? Right. So we may approve just by approving the recommended action?
Recommended action is 4 resolutions. The ordinance will be voted on by the public.
All right, sorry, that's correct.
So then I'll make a motion, Mayor. So I make a motion to approve the 4 recommended actions with the changes to the ballot title, as well as designated Mayor Pooh and Vice Mayor Menchaca as the council to write the argument for.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Excellent. Thank you all. Next item, please.
Mission District Economic Analysis and Market Study Presentation, Resolution Number 19-53, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 operating budget to appropriate $48,851 for the remaining portion of the Mission District Economic Analysis Study. Presentation will be made by Economic Development Manager Angelica Frostalupo.
Good evening, Mayor Pooh, Council. The item before you is on the Mission District Economic Analysis and Market Study. Earlier this year, the city entered into a professional services agreement with AECOM for the study. And over the last several months, AECOM has conducted extensive research and site analysis, as well as interviews with Mission District stakeholders and other community members. The results of the study are driven primarily by economic data and market conditions. And the purpose of the study is to obtain a macro analysis of the district with recommendations for future development potential and economic vitality of the Mission District. This document is intended to be a roadmap for the City Council. It's a discussion starting point with various pathways to help the Council set policy and prioritize future development of the Mission District. Tonight we're asking Council to discuss and provide some feedback to staff on the recommendations and implementation strategies, which were outlined by AECOM and grouped into 5 categories, including some general recommendations, such as continuing to engage the Mission District stakeholders, regulatory recommendations, such as potentially updating the specific plan in the Mission District, urban design, such as wayfinding and directional signage, cultural district, such as increased programming in the Mission District, and new development, such as potentially releasing a request for qualifications for development of a city-owned property. Additionally, the Council is asked to adopt Resolution Number 1953 to pay the balance of the cost of the Mission District study. At this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to the AECOM team to present a summary of the study, and after the presentation, the AECOM team and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
already. Thank you. Good evening, council members, city attorney, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager. As Angelica mentioned, we are here at the behest of the city to present to you the economic analysis we did for the Mission District. I'm here with my colleagues Lucia Fisher and Kathy Tang, and we'll all be presenting pieces of this to you tonight. Bring this up a little bit here. This is a process that began in February, I believe, late February, and has taken us through the 7 tasks you see here. These tasks included a number of meetings with stakeholders, meetings with council, meetings with staff, a variety of interviews, analysis of data, some interim presentations to staff, and what brings us here to task 7 today, the reporting piece. What you're going to see tonight is really an abstraction of a written report we've already submitted, and so some of these materials should be familiar to you. Rather than read the entire report to you, we hope this will be really kind of a high-level summary of the key points. And so this is the overview portion of it. My colleague Kathy will present the analysis of the site assessment, the physical site assessment. Lucia will share the summary of our market findings. I will walk you through the highest and best use analysis that we conducted. And finally, the recommendations section is something that we will all do together. Kathy.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'll quickly walk you through some of our key findings from our site analysis. So this is an analysis of the physical site conditions in the district. So here's a map of the district for reference. The little yellow shape is the Mission District, and you can see the district in context of the entire city of San Gabriel and the neighboring cities and some major thoroughfares and freeways. But when looking at the district at this scale, it's interesting to note that there we go. Okay. So the slides that I just presented, were just a few key takeaways from our findings. Additional analysis is included in the report, which I think you have handy. But just as a quick summary, there are a lot of positives to the district. Like I said, it has good bones. It's ready to go in terms of walkability and scale. But there are issues, and we think that these issues are solvable. And later on in the presentation, we'll provide you with some potential recommendations of how we can address some of those issues.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. My name is Lucia. I'll be reviewing the market demand by the individual land uses that we analyzed. Beginning with residential. Regionally, residential demand is strong and development has not kept up pace with the entire region. But also in San Gabriel, there has not been development that's matched the trends seen in other market areas nearby. Primarily with multi-family housing. You can see on the graphic that the city of San Gabriel has more single-family homes compared to the other market areas that we analyzed. Multi-family, attached multi-family, as seen in the picture from a development in Alhambra, would help diversify the city's residential options and also help increase population density if it were developed in the Mission District, providing a stronger base for district businesses. Next, we analyzed office. The district does have access constraints that Kathy mentioned. The lack of visibility, lack of regional access makes it challenging for larger scale office development. Las Tunas Drive is a high job density corridor, so there is options to complement some of the medical office use seen there. Within the district, the city of San Gabriel is the largest employer, so unless there's office needs from the city, it's not clear that there's a major user that would require new office development within the district. However, the largest employer for the city as a whole is the San Gabriel Valley Medical Center, which is directly next to the study area. That also provides an option for medical office growth that would complement both the hospital and the other medical office uses nearby. That sometimes has different site requirements than traditional format office. Next, we looked at retail. Retail is challenging in the district due to the low population density and the current visitation patterns. It's insufficient to support any meaningful retail growth, and it's challenging for the retail that is currently there. Once again, the access and visibility provides challenges that definitely would preclude, at this time, national and regional retailers. Large format uses such as a grocery store have very high parking and visibility requirements. However, the character and historic aspect of the district are things that some retailers do want to locate around. And as the district becomes a more popular destination, with the food hall coming in and building upon San Gabriel's reputation as a food destination, different types of retailers may be interested in exploring a site in the district. For hotel use, the Mission District is not an optimal site, once again due to the site constraints and the lack of current places to develop. That would be the size a hotel would want to use to develop on. Hotels generally locate along major corridors. As you can see, on Valley Boulevard, Hilton and the Sheraton have been very successful. The city's Economic Development Department estimates that there's about 500,000 visitors to San Gabriel annually. And we've heard anecdotally from the hotel operators that primarily Chinese tourists will use San Gabriel as a home base to visit other popular areas in Los Angeles, and then return to San Gabriel to dine or shop at for various souvenirs. However, they do not visit the Mission District because there are not attractions there that they're interested in visiting, and they don't really have a clear way to get there. So there is an opportunity to capture more visitation from the current hotel users without building a hotel within the district. Lastly, we looked at attractions. Los Angeles regionally is a very hard market to develop attractions in. There's a very competitive environment for must-see tourism products, and that would be your Disneylands, the beaches, Universal Studios, etc. So it's unlikely that the broader Los Angeles tourist market would be a support for attractions within the Mission District. You have excellent attractions that exist, the Playhouse and the Mission, that do very well. However, there's definitely opportunities to expand their performance that would increase the vibrancy of the district, and we'll get into those later in the recommendations at the end. There are some small-scale resident-serving attractions that we reviewed a wide range of attractions included in the full report and selected a few small-scale resident-serving attractions such as a children's play space that could locate in the district due to their site requirements, and this has the potential to increase district visitation. And lastly, the Blossom Food Hall will be an excellent destination and has the potential to really establish San Gabriel as a premier food destination within the valley and bring in people regionally and beyond. I'll turn this over to Andrew now.
Thanks, Lucia. And so to summarize really what just Lucia was saying about the market opportunity, quick bullets here. Residential, there's strong regional demand and supply is lagging demand, so there's a pent-up demand opportunity for more residential. In particular, in San Gabriel, there is a lack of kind of a diversity of offerings, which you're seeing elsewhere in the San Gabriel Valley, in particular in highly amenitized multifamily. For office, there are real opportunities associated with the proximity to the medical center and the fact that there's already a medical office concentration on Las Tunas. For retail, there are some access and visibility issues to overcome, in particular for large format retail, which typically requires a lot of parking and a lot of visibility to be successful. In addition, the available parcels, the opportunity sites are a bit small and a little non-standard in shape, which presents design challenges, operating challenges. However, San Gabriel has a number of Pulse assets. In particular, it's already known as a dining destination, and this is definitely something to build upon. For hotels, within the district itself, the same access and visibility issues that are challenging for retail are also the same, even more so, for hotels. Branded hotels tend to have a very standardized format, and non-standard parcels are very challenging for them. Finally, for attractions, the site is a little on the small side to build a large major magnet attraction, the kind that would have a big regional draw. There's also a lot of competition in the region for must-see attractions, which is not to say you can't build one. There's always room for more if they're really good. At the Playhouse and Mission District and the Mission itself, we see a definite opportunity to improve performance of those existing assets, and doing so would improve visitation and vibrancy. We're very pleased at the fact of the Blossom Food Hall that's been proposed. It's very consistent with the kind of attraction we would actually recommend for this district, a catalytic food destination that would help put the area on the map. So we think that's a very positive sign. Now I'm going to take you through the highest and best use analysis. What a highest and best use analysis is it's an exploration of the underlying economics that would support some proposed uses. And the intention is to model different uses to explore whether or not the area would support them. And so this modeling that we've done is intended to be illustrative. A lot of different uses could go in, but our goal is that through this work we get a general feeling for what is supportable financially in the market in these spaces. And so we chose to do the analysis on two sites, two opportunity sites, which Kathy pointed out earlier on were the kind of the highest priority sites because they are publicly owned, which means there's an opportunity for the city to play a role in catalyzing development. They are partially underutilized because they're used for surface parking. In the case of the park and ride lot, you have a little under an acre, a little bit less is actually buildable due to setbacks. And for the Playhouse lot, it's a bit of a complicated site. Not only are there 189 spaces, but there's also the Playhouse itself, the Hayes House, the Historical Association, and on adjacent parcels you have a vacant lot and the Mission basketball courts. And so the overall area of that site is about 4.5 acres, but in a first phase where you're really building just on the surface lot, it's about 1.35 buildable acres. So those are the two sites we're using for our analysis. And we looked at 3 different generalized land uses. Townhomes, multifamily mixed use, and multifamily residential. These images are just illustrative. They're not, they weren't designed for the site. They weren't, necessarily targeted for it, but they're just intended to give you a sense of what it is. The criteria for selecting these uses were that they were market supported. In other words, uses that we saw supported in the market analysis we just did. That they help add density and just demand to the area, because we've identified earlier that additional on-site density, whether day population or residential population, is a strong element to help revitalize and enhance the district, and that these uses should fit the site dimensions and height limits on the opportunity sites. In some cases, we expanded the density beyond what's currently permitted, and we'll point that out where we did that in order to sort of test out those different densities. The key assumptions that these are for rent projects, assuming that the city would retain ownership of the lots, and through some sort of long-term ground lease arrangement, they would retain control. Current market rates, top of market rates were assumed, and the parking requirements we assume were based on the current code for the Mission District, which I want to point out are actually a little more lenient than the city as a whole. So the next 4 slides I'm going to show you are quickly, I'll tick through them quickly. They were the different analyses we did for the park and ride lot. And the first prototype we looked at were townhomes. This prototype allowed us to put 8 townhomes. We also did a version with 9 townhomes on it. So that's a density of 9 dwelling units per acre. And this typology did not allow us to replace the 90 existing park and ride spaces on site. I want to point that out. So the finding is that these uses certainly would pencil as a project if you didn't have to replace the 90 spaces. But it leaves open the question of what do we do about those 90 displaced spaces? Do we need them? Do we have to build them elsewhere? So this use would support new development without replacing the spaces. The next two prototypes assume subterranean parking that replaces all the lost spaces. They're both mixed use. This one here has a ground level retail, so you'd have retail facing the drive, South Mission Drive, with one layer of retail, of residential on top. This did not pencil.
Cultural district. As I mentioned, you have two great attractions in the area now with the Playhouse and the Mission, and we think that you should capitalize on those existing cultural assets. Right now, the Playhouse operates as a rental facility. If you were able to provide resources for the Playhouse to present its own programming, which would allow for events and performances that could sell a greater number of tickets due to targeted marketing and understanding the viewer base, the Playhouse may be able to perform better. I know you're in the process of doing a study for the Playhouse, so we have spoken with the consultant on that project, and we agree with his recommendations that he shared with us at that time. Second, develop a stronger partnership with the San Gabriel Mission. The Mission has several unique event spaces between the gardens and the large parking lot, as well as the church itself, where there could be music programming. We think a stronger partnership with the Mission would also allow greater programming throughout the whole district. Which leads to the next recommendation, which is to increase regular programming. The programming that's within the district does very well now, such as the Lunar New Year, the Dumplings and Beer Festival. We think there should be more regular programming. The 626 Golden Streets events, I hadn't heard of that. That's an excellent event. Anything that brings more visibility to the district on a regular basis, such as a monthly art and wine walk or something along those lines, may be very successful. Happening to me too. Okay. Put it down. She's doing it now. Thank you. Third recommendation, increase marketing and branding for the Mission District. We think it's important to have a very strong brand identity. That can go along with some of the wayfinding urban design recommendations that will come next. Having a dedicated staff member to focus solely on marketing the Mission District would be very helpful, as well as partnering with the San Gabriel Tourism and Marketing Improvement District to send out Mission District specific marketing materials. Lastly, support existing and future tenants. With the Blossom Food Hall coming in, that's an excellent opportunity to really support the opening of that, scheduling programming around it, and making sure that that is a destination that people regionally know about and will come to some of the opening events and help establish that cultural district, food destination, all of the things that we recommend to build the vibrancy of the Mission District. And also any future tenants, the attractions that we recommended in our report that will require tenant recruitment, potentially incentives related to rent or parking concessions, etc. So that may be something that could help build the vibrancy of the district. And then I'll turn this over to Kathy.
Additional enhancements to the existing areas in the district can be more physical, in addition to the programming recommendations Lucia just mentioned. The first thing that we noticed is that could really benefit the district is a gateway sign. So whether you're entering from the north or the south, a sign that could arch over the street or could be vertical posts on either side of the street, I think could really help orient a visitor coming from afar to announce that this is the entrance into the district. You're coming from one place and entering a place that's totally different. This has been used in a lot of other historic main streets. Monrovia is a close example where they have an archway over the street. But what that really does is it helps to brand the district, really give it an identity that will then continue on throughout the district. In addition, just additional signage throughout the district would be helpful. So we think the district could really benefit from a new signage and wayfinding program, so that there are markers along Mission Drive that help orient both a pedestrian and a motorist for the different attractions that are in the district. So whether that's parking, City Hall, the Playhouse, the Mission, this would be specifically critical for that connection that I mentioned earlier between the front door of the Playhouse to the front door of the Mission, to really orient people as they're walking and driving through the district to know where things are and to even discover things that they didn't know were in the district. Some of those pieces for signage and wayfinding could also be opportunities for art and history. So especially here in the district, given all of its history with the Mission, this could be an opportunity to allow local artists and schools to participate in these armatures to provide pieces of history that have happened in the district and other information that might be handy. One thing that really stood out to us in terms of signage is all of the signage that is currently affixed to the retail tenants along Mission Drive. So if you're standing right in front of a building, you see the sort of scripted letter in white. It's parallel to the building. So if you're standing right in front of it, you can see it. But if you're walking down the street, as a pedestrian usually does on a main street, a retail main street, you don't see the signage. And so typically what you'll see in really good retail main streets are perpendicular, or what we call blade signage, that sticks out from the facade of the building. And here in the district, the armature, the piece that actually sticks out, could be the same across all tenants, to keep the same style. But the actual sign itself could allow that tenant to have its own identity. So you know what's a Starbucks and what's another store as you're walking down the street. This keeps sticking. Okay. And then the last recommendation is sidewalk dining. So probably the best way to add vibrancy to the street is to put people and activity directly onto the street. So the restaurants and the cafes that are here in the district could really benefit by putting some sidewalk dining seating directly on the street, so that you see that people are there at the restaurant, or enjoying their meal, or enjoying the district. This could particularly be really nice, we think, in the arcade building right next to here. You could provide seating right under the arcade, or even right outside the arcade. There's a lot of space that could be used for sidewalk dining. In terms of long-term transformation, this is the third category, transformation, we think there could be some improvements to some of your regulatory documents. So the first one that comes to mind is the Mission District Specific Plan, which was last adopted in 2004. It's been a while. The document could use some dusting off and looking at again. We've identified three specific actions that we think could be improved within the specific plan. And I apologize for the last one, but the first one is to allow by right residential uses. So currently, residential uses alone are not allowed in the district, only mixed use. And even if residential is allowed in mixed use, it's only allowed at a 1.0 FAR. And as we've seen in the highest and best use analyses that Andrew shared earlier, some of those scenarios that we tested went above and beyond that FAR. So for those projects to be able to pencil, they needed to go above and beyond what's currently allowed in the specific plan. In addition to allowing residential alone, we think that in the specific plan area, you could potentially up the residential density. So right now it's capped at, I believe, 40 DUs per acre. And again, the examples that we were showing, the projects that would need to pencil on those sites would need to go above and beyond that.
Thank you. And to wrap up, so what you've heard is there are a number of things that can be done in the short term to set the stage. There are quite a few initiatives that can improve existing operations of the district that can hopefully be implemented without too much cost. And these can have a really profound effect on the vibrancy and performance of the area. If and when, and this can happen in parallel with this, can happen after it, but there's also the bigger scale set of things you can do are really about redeveloping those opportunity sites. And the way you would do it is through issuing RFPs. As we discussed earlier, the Playhouse lot probably is the best opportunity, both from a development feasibility perspective and from the perspective of what redevelopment, what new uses would best activate the area in terms of creating retail vitality and a strong day and residential population base for the area. Phase 2 of the Playhouse site also could happen, but probably would happen only after there's some level of success has been proven with Phase 1. The Park and Ride site is a little more challenging because of the parking issues, but there are ways of thinking about the two and together. Perhaps some of the value created by redevelopment of the Park and Ride site could be used to pay for additional parking on the Playhouse site, so you have more of a holistic parking strategy. And I should have mentioned just prior to that, the parking analysis that we mentioned early on is probably an important, critical piece, a source of understanding before going forward with these kinds of initiatives. Finally, depending on the amount of investment and change required, there may be costs associated with streetscape improvements, landscape improvements, and parking improvements. And a strategy for financing that will be an important part of the overall package. Understanding the program is important. Understanding the timing is important. Order of magnitude costs.
Yesterday, I think we can add to the balance sheet that Father Sarah got the mission facing the wrong direction, which I found a bit ironic. The mission's been here for a long time. That's the direction it faces, and I think we're missing an opportunity to really look at a broader gateway and entrance into the mission district. I think we need to pay attention to the things that we have done as a city. We have made changes to make the mission district a pedestrian district. We have closed Mission Drive to create the park that now is adjacent to the Mission. We did renovate Smith Park to recognize the Tongva heritage of the region. And those are all opportunities and gateways into the Mission District. So the failure to recognize Broadway and Del Mar as a gateway or Mission and Del Mar as a gateway into the Mission District is something that I think should be given attention. And it tells a more complete story of the district. It speaks to the history. I think that Mr. McGordy would be shocked that the Playhouse isn't connected to the Mission. Once upon a time, it was the destination for Los Angeles, and people came to the Mission to be educated about the history of California. They visited the reliquary with the missions of San Gabriel before continuing their walk over to the Mission itself. And if 3 million people could do that in the run of the Mission Play, I think there's a way we can find to have it done again and to connect those resources as a more cohesive and coherent district. Again, I hope that there is plenty and ample opportunity to discuss some of the other findings that were made in this report. But I have a lot of concerns as I watch what was coming forward. And I think that there is a wisdom in the Mission District specific plan that we should be paying attention to as we move forward in this. One thing that I would call out, it's been a point of discussion in our commission, the Office of Historic Preservation has status codes. We have multiple resources, about 10 by my count, that are either designated as National Register listings that have been determined eligible through a Section 106 process or that are deemed eligible through survey. So there's a significant impact, not just with the two major anchors that were identified in this report, the Hayes House being one of them. So with that, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senya. Next speaker's request card is Ken Lee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Ken Lee, Vice President of Development for Pacific Plaza Premier Development Group. Might be wondering why I'm up here speaking on this particular topic since our property is pretty far away, but I will say that within a 4 square mile city, it's not far away at all. And so when I think about the Mission District, my first impressions of the Mission District, it really is the heart of the city. I do believe that it has tremendous bones, and our project, along with other projects, all paths will lead back to the Mission District. So I just wanted to come up here and commend the City Council for putting the investment into both the analysis of what can be possible, but also want to commend staff for their work on this project as well. I recently got a chance to finally tour the Mission and the Playhouse thanks to Sandy Roscoe. We are a chamber member as well, and so we were just blown away by the culturally rich resources that are in this city, and there's just tremendous potential for what can happen in the Mission District, and we just want to see that this community continue to be developed in a way that continues to strengthen both the history and the future of the city. We do believe that there is great potential, but obviously sometimes you have to increase densities, et cetera, as well. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. I do believe a parking study is appropriate, and it'll be interesting to see how that parking study takes into account current trends in terms of rideshare and other things that are decreasing parking demand as well. So just want to be here to lend our support and just, again, just congratulate you for continuing to invest in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Next card is from Debbie Kilgore.
Hello again. I'd like to ask you, do any of you live in an area where there are condos right next to you? Most of you probably have single-family homes. I felt the beginning of the report about single-family homes are not as important as condos being built. Well, they are being built everywhere. But one of the things you guys and this group I met with when you had a special meeting months ago, one of the things I talked about was parking. I asked them to go around the neighborhood. Parking is one of the big issues here. And if you think about putting condominiums here, there's 2 spaces for every condominium, but everybody has more than 2 cars. So where are they going to park? The biggest problem with this area in this neighborhood, if you drive down the small streets, every street is full of cars. So taking an area and making it one flat level, if you're going to start anything here, why don't you consider building at least a 2-story parking lot? Because it's a problem here. And where are the people are going? Mission, right now, people go down Padilla and Carrillo and go down South Arroyo Drive to avoid all the traffic. And they did not mention 2 schools that are right here in the neighborhood about changing this. There was no talk about safety or anything, and I think that's really bad. A hotel in this area, they have already attempted to do 261 Mission on South Mission as a boutique hotel. It's not an area for a hotel. We have a business, a retail, a multi-unit retail and condos at Padilla and Mission. Half the buildings or the offices are still empty. They're not full. So please consider, where's the traffic going to go if it's going up and down Mission? It's going to go down the side streets as more business becomes here. And if you put bike lanes in this area, this is very small street. Not like when you look at Monrovia that has that nice wide street. Those streets in Monrovia basically are nice and wide. This little street is not very big. It's not very long. And also to talk about putting seating on the sidewalks for restaurants and things, they already do that, but if you have a restaurant and you put seating everywhere, where are the people going to walk on the sidewalk? It's not that wide of a sidewalk. So there are many things that need to be considered in this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the City Council on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment for this agenda item. And we will now begin council discussion. So does anybody want to begin? Well, gathering our thoughts.
Sure.
Vice Mayor Machaca, thank you.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank the staff and ACOM for a very really thoughtful analysis. I'm glad we decided to go forward with it because everyone has an opinion and everyone wants the Mission District to be activated. I know for myself, I want it to be a true downtown. You know, it's the core of our city. North, south, it's right in the middle. And especially with the recent programming that we've had, I mean, everybody recognizes San Gabriel with the Mission Playhouse and the San Gabriel Mission. I mean, those are truly our anchors. There were some surprises, I have to admit. Others you kind of knew, but I like to always look at the data. You know, I'm very data driven, and I prefer to have data than sometimes just opinions. And I appreciate that you did. You know, you looked at other cities. You're telling us about the trends, but you did a really good roadmap, and you did a deep dive. And so I really appreciate that. I thought it was kind of interesting how page 108 kind of summarized everything. It was actually would have been helpful to start there and then go back. But anyway, the reality is everything has a cost. And so we do need to look at the overall financial strategy. That's the first thing that came to mind. The other thing that came to mind is the fact that our greatest leverage is our city-owned assets, which I think you've emphasized time after time. I'm not sure. I put together some information, so I'm just going to have some thoughts, and then maybe we can just, after we all have our moment to discuss it, we can kind of organize it better. But what came to mind for me immediately was the fact that we have a lot of partners that we can work with. And I think right now we're just at the right time. We got business owners who really want this to work. They want the vitality. They want economic life in this district. We have a hospital that seems to be much more willing to work with us. I don't think they've been as open in the past. Our San Gabriel Mission is celebrating their 250 years. They're developing strategic plan. So this kind of falls in line with what we're doing. I'm really proud of our commissions. We have a planning commission. We have 2 members that have been there for over 20 years, and then we have 3 others that have really strong industry experience. So I think we have a really strong planning commission more than ever. We have a design and review commission. It's 5 members. We were kind of limping along with 3 for a long time, but we got 5 members, and again, they're very, very qualified. And then lastly, we have our Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission. And so I just think that we have the partners that could go through. We talk about the outreach with our stakeholders, but I think these commissions are you know, they're primarily residents. They've been through several processes, and I think if collaboratively we get them all involved, no one feels like, or no one is excluded, I think we can get a really good product. The other partner that came to mind was the TMID, the Tourism and Marketing Improvement District, which I think you did mention. I know they're, you know, I was part of the formation. I know the hotels are looking for ways to bridge.
In a historic district, whether it's designated yet or not, we all know it's a historic district. I think that's very important. So that's kind of my first thought overall. When Angelica was asking for comments, the only comment I gave to Angelica at the time, because I was about halfway done, was that I specifically remember requesting reviewing of non-housing options. That would be commercial only. To me, it seems like I was just disappointed not to see that. It seemed like it was dismissed out of hand. It's not feasible. If it wasn't dismissed out of hand, there was no explanation of why. If it's the reason I say that is because I think the analysis here is pretty out of the box, formulaic, land value, residual land value. It doesn't ask the question, is the council willing to sink a little bit into this district at a quote-unquote loss, unlike a developer would, for the ongoing vibrancy of the district. We do it every single year with the Playhouse. But we wouldn't say, hey, this is costing us money, let's get rid of it. I think we should be an incubator, and we should be, I think eventually, it may not pencil out right away, but eventually, if we build a 2 or 3 story just like that, but take that commercial out, or the residential out and add it all commercial, I think we could eventually have a very feasible commercial only option. I don't know, because information really wasn't put here. Could it be at a loss for the first 5 years? Would we be willing to subsidize it or potentially figure out a way to do it? I don't know. But that was kind of my first, gee, I wish that had been here, because that was the main thing I wanted to see out of the study, and I thought I was clear about that when we approved it. I said I really want to see economics only on, economics on a commercial only. Because, really, what a developer would do is not necessarily what a city would do. We're not here for a quote-unquote profit, although we do have to obviously pencil out eventually in cash flow. I believe there's a lot of revenue to be created from owning the land and renting it out to commercial, even if we use a property manager or whatever we do. And I'd just like to couch this in that it's a one-time deal to do this. Once we do invest in this, once we do get a plan, it's going to have it's going to define the district, and it's going to have an enduring impact. So we really do, like Denise said, we have to look at every option. Even if we look at the option and say, nope, that's not going to work, or no, we don't like that, we do. I think it's incumbent upon us to look at everything. The cost for replacement parking is always going to be an issue here. And I think if you look at the district parking, it is slightly less than the rest of the city. And the reason I believe is because a lot of our district revolves right around, it's a small little district, and it revolves right around the Playhouse. I mean, because a lot of times, a lot of the businesses there, people park at the Playhouse and then walk across the street. I mean, I know because I've seen a lot of it when I owned a business there. It happened a lot. The only time it really is a major concern is rush hour. It gets quite busy, so people crossing, they have a difficult time. Anytime there's an event at the Playhouse, people park all the way down to Arroyo. I mean, they go all the way there. I've seen them walking 5, 6, 7 blocks. So we don't have enough parking there. So I'd really like to, I think a parking study would be important. And really some of the, getting back to the recommendations, they're really just adding density, mass, and height. That's pretty basic. 3 things I really don't want in that district. It's just so developers could cram more people there. And I think if we do it on the Playhouse lot, you're really taking away the scale of the Playhouse, the importance of the Playhouse. You're really overpowering it, even with a 3-story. It'd be just overpowered. 2 stories getting there, but I think a 2-story commercial would work. I don't know that I want residential there, or the community wants residential there. I'd really have to see that. I mean, I'd want to see overwhelming demand from the community to, hey, let's bring more people in here. I don't see that yet. I know we have a housing shortage, but I don't think this is going to be the be-all and end-all of the solution to that. Because I know when I sit there and I try to come down Mission, sometimes at 5 o'clock, you're lucky to get from Broadway to City Hall in about 10 minutes sometimes. I've been stopped completely. So it just depends. I mean, it gets pretty bad. Adding more people there is not going to help that. And I would have liked to have seen information on, if possible, who's visiting the district. Is it San Gabriel residents? Is it how far are they coming? I didn't really see any information there. And I know that there was some, but it was really just stuff that I could probably pull up myself. I didn't see any actual polling. For a cost like this, I'd like to see some sort of project-specific information rather than general information. And then my last comment is really about we do need creativity here. It's a very unique district. For example, we shouldn't have on some of the options like a binary path. Will the Archdiocese sell us the lot? Will they not sell us a lot? Did we ever think, hey, how about if we build parking underground or possibly above ground and replace the basketball court? Because that's really what they need it for. Put it on the top level of a structure or put it underneath. Like Denise said, partner with the hospital. They could provide a lot of parking if we worked with them. We could probably do some financing or some grant money and do that. And I know this is a real general study, but I'd really like to see a little more creativity. I mean, I think we made a pretty strong investment in this, and it is a good starting. But I don't think, for me, this provided everything I was looking for. I mean, everything that is presented is great. I like it, but there's just not enough there from what I was expecting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember Costanzo.
Thank you, Mayor Pooh.
Yeah.
I think what this study does is bring all the little pieces together so we do have it in one report and we can analyze it appropriately and moving forward. One of the things I was very glad to see is the possibility of not touching the Hayes House and or the museum, leaving them where we are, because I'm very sensitive to that and I think they should remain where they are. I even think that if we get a developer to come in, whatever that may be, or if that may ever be, that the developer considers leaving the Hayes House but maybe building a new museum, because the museum is of much disrepair, and I could see a developer kind of incorporating the design of the museum into the design of what we would do on that property. So I was glad to see that. The report did say the city owns the Hayes House, and that is incorrect. The city does own the museum property, but not the Hayes House, so that just needs to be a correction. I think I was also disappointed in not seeing more retail, because I think that's what's needed there rather than housing. I think there's enough housing around the area. But again, I do respect the comments and the analysis that you're providing us. And parking is always an issue. Did we ever, I thought we had done a parking analysis in that area before. We have never. And what does something like that cost? Did I miss what that cost is to do something like that? A parking study?
That was not included in the report, and I'm not aware of one that was done in the recent past. Ones that I've done in the past few years are on the magnitude of about $40,000
Okay.
with a parking consultant.
Okay. I was just curious, the ballpark on that.
I think we've looked at different parking scenarios more recently with some of the new retail coming into the district, but we have not done a full-scale parking study. I think we've had discussions about needing that, and I think concurrent with what Mark said, the most recent one I did actually cost $75,000 because it takes quite a bit of time, and they actually come out, depending on the firm you select, and they track all of the parking trends for a set period of time. They look to see not only the uses that are there, the number of spaces, but they analyzed all the different options you can have in expanding your current parking program. And it does add up. It's quite a bit of work.
So that's the end result, telling us
It
more
will actually-
specifically, or giving us a better sense of opportunities for parking?
All of that. So
Okay.
it will provide a very detailed analysis on what's already there. It would be the surface parking, structure parking, parking that's owned by other venues and facilities. Then it would be an analysis of what the real parking demands are for a district like the Mission District. And it will provide cost estimates associated with it. In addition to providing information on, it may be that the future parking program for the district is not only the construction of parking structures and the creation of new parking, but it also may include opportunities for a parking district where new businesses coming in have to pay into that to basically absorb some of the costs of that parking program. So it identifies everything that's involved with parking. So it would be both the construction, it would be the use of what's already there, and some sort of a parking program.
And the analysis or the study would be based on what's currently there in the Mission District?
What's currently there and the opportunities for what could come to the district and what types of parking would be needed to alleviate that demand. So if we're talking about whether it's retail development, whether it's housing development, whether it's just revitalizing the entire district, what amount of parking is needed to sustain that?
And this study would be better done prior to us moving forward at this point? Or when is the best time to put that study into place?
Well, ultimately, I think once we have a better sense from council as to the direction we'd like to head, I think there are actions that can happen concurrently. I don't necessarily think one has to happen before the other. I think there are some short-term recommendations that are included in the study that could happen concurrently with if council chooses to move forward with the parking study. So I think there are some things that can happen simultaneously. If I think tonight one of the directions is to explore the possibility of a parking study, then I think what staff would do at that point is we would explore the possibility and we would come back to council with an idea of how long that would take, how much that would cost, and if council decides at that time to pursue it, then we can pursue it.
I think the best thing that's happening within the city that includes the Mission District is many of the entities involved didn't wait to have this come out. The hotels are already pursuing different options of ways to put programs together to bring people to the Mission District. The Mission is working on opportunities. The Chamber is doing great things. So I commend all of these organizations because they didn't necessarily wait, and all the things that they're doing are already in the study. So I think we should be very, very proud of not waiting till this came out, but still progressing along with the information that's at hand. But I think we're doing a good job. We all wanted to succeed, and as we all say, we've got one chance, and let's work together to make it happen in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Castander, one thing I do want to point out is, as Councilman Harrington mentioned, we do own the lot, and we don't have to treat it like it's a money-making venture or that we have holding costs like a traditional developer. So if the majority of the council wanted to see what the market would bear if we, as an example, sent out an RFP for just retail development, we could do that at very little to no cost to us. And as far as getting creative, we could require things as part of that RFP for a successful respondent as part of their development or prior to submitting for their development, doing things like a parking study and doing it at their cost, or updating the specific plan as part of their project if we're going to be doing anything to densities or land uses. And that's stuff that we may not have to fund as a city, but can put on the backs of somebody who is a successful proponent. We can test the market that way without spending a lot of time. We can do it quickly. And then if it isn't successful, we can come back and talk about further scenarios. Or we can start with residential and retail. There are really many ways that we could approach this and not have to wait.
Because I do love the idea of the paseo and the walkability of all that, and having the historical or the Hayes House and the museum be a part of all that. So there are some exciting things, and I'm always one that thinks, I don't know, I always expect more than sometimes what I get, but I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just always want everybody else to solve all the problems. So, but this is great.
Well, as somebody who loves great urban design, I think that the paseo, if we had a parking structure, as you talked about, and Councilwoman Menchaca, Vice Mayor Menchaca pointed out about working with our partners. Let's just say for a second we were to build a structure on the hospital's parking lot. What better way to have folks walk to a play at the Mission Playhouse than to walk through that paseo past retail with dining and restaurants and shops and everything else, rather than walking through a parking lot.
Right.
So I think we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Let's see here. I think I wanted to first highlight that I think this is the study is very well done. I want to thank staff and AECOM for taking some of my early comments into consideration here. One thing I'd like to point out for the community too is that is something that was mentioned earlier by AECOM and also by Vice Mayor Menchaca, is like we've had 15 years of experience under this Mission District specific plan, and it's basically just hasn't changed in that entire time. So we know that there's challenging economics here. The socioeconomics are challenging, but part of, I think, some parts of this study, as well as previous studies that we have had done, is about how we can use our trade area, using the trade area to lift up the Mission District. Because the trade area, meaning the primary market, a 15-minute drive radius, includes San Marino and South Pasadena and Alhambra and even in parts of Pasadena. And so I think that the opportunities that we need to capitalize on are absolutely about the cultural and historical assets, but it's also about capitalizing on this primary market trade area. And I think, and that goes along with raising awareness and having that branding, having that sense of identity that was mentioned with the gateway treatments and so forth, the wayfinding signage, even within that trade area. Because, I think if you go out and you poll people, even in our immediate surrounding communities, they don't even know, most of them don't know or are not aware of the significance of the mission or, of the city of San Gabriel. Sometimes when I'm at regional events, I like to, I don't like to, but sometimes people ask, well, where's San Gabriel? I was like, well, it's a place that the valley, the mountains, the river, are all named after us, are all and the mission. So somehow or another, we do need to increase that awareness and identity. Second thing I think I wanted to highlight is I do also agree with the idea that there's certain low-hanging fruit here that could be capitalized on right away. I like a lot of the recommendations about the signage, wayfinding signage, and the couple of pictures that were provided as examples in terms of, I don't know how else to call it, but maybe like educational monuments, I think are things that we really need to start thinking about and incorporating here. The signage, I was at a sign unveiling, I guess, of the new Old Spanish Trail sign, which is tucked over in the corner, and it's unfortunate because it's a beautiful sign. It's done in 3 languages. Maybe even AECOM doesn't know that Mission Road right here leading up to the mission is the convergence of 3 trails. It's the De Anza Trail, the Old Spanish Trail, and El Camino Real. And we think it's the only place where all those 3 trails actually converge all in one place. Well, that's a great story to tell. You can tell the story about how, even the entire area was settled, and it's true, right? It's the oldest standing structure in all of LA County, the birthplace of the region, and part of the reason is because all trails led to the mission. I guess we don't tell that story often enough either. The saying was all roads led to Rome. Well, back in the day, all trails led to San Gabriel and led to the mission. So, why these things are not part of our zeitgeist or culture or our general history and awareness, I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like those are the kinds of things where we have opportunities to make them more accessible, for general members of the public. Why should we hide all this rich history and culture? And Plaza Park would be a great opportunity there. I like some of the recommendations that weren't pulled out in the presentation tonight, but are spelled out in the report. So I mentioned it's 109 pages long. That you can use the signage to help connect the Playhouse and the mission. And I think Senya's comments that Brody would be appalled if he heard that the mission and the Playhouse are not connected. Granted, I think that maybe that's true. It's just that I didn't take the comments from AECOM to mean that they weren't historically connected or somehow have a relationship. Just that because of the orientation and so forth, there is a lack of, I think, that kind of, connectivity between the two, even in terms of uses and users, right? People who go to the mission and attend Mass don't generally go to the district or catch a show at the Playhouse, and vice versa. And so raising that awareness and creating more, physical reminders of all of that, I think would be very helpful. I even like the ideas with the retail signage. When I saw those pictures, I was like, wow, what a no-brainer. what a complete no-brainer. And why don't we already have that? Because it can be done in a tasteful way that is that, is in line and in keeping with the Mission District style, while still increasing awareness for the businesses that are there. And so I think a lot of those things on the short term are readily implementable. And I personally I would be very interested in updating and or revising the Mission District specific plan. Not just for, I think when we were talking about some of these issues such as housing and parking, we're kind of we're thinking mostly about the city's two main assets, which are the park and ride lot and the Playhouse parking lot. But the district is broader than that, and we should think about zoning for the rest of it. This sort of strip of housing that's just on the north side of Broadway, or there's one parcel here, or might even be a couple of different small parcels between Love to Go and Factory Tea Bar, which would be really prime real estate for either of those kinds of things, either commercial or residential, and yet there's it kind of breaks up the flow of this walkable pedestrian district without having something there that is more attractive, because it's currently, I think, like accounting offices, things like that. And then there's like 4 small residential units in the back. So I think, in a way, by rethinking the zoning and the regulations, we might be able to encourage different kinds of development, which would help. What the city can do directly does relate more to the parcels that we own. And on the parking piece, I'd like to just say, just as an example, not by any means saying that it would be exclusively, the only strategy to provide replacement parking, but the park and ride lot currently now has 90 spaces, and we put a 5-story structure, 5-level structure on that, which is what Alhambra has, for instance, behind the movie theater at Garfield and Main. Their new structure that's on First and Main, basically they have like 2 multi-level structures like right next to each other, and this is a big part. Those are the first things that Alhambra built to revitalize that Main Street area. 25 years ago it was dead. They actually subsidized Starbucks to go in there with $1 million and also used redevelopment money, which we currently don't have in a robust way. But they use this form of tax increment financing to build these parking structures, and that's what has made it a more thriving commercial area that it is right now. In any case, if you, let's say, even say 4 levels or 5 levels, then you actually multiply that by 4 or 5, that's 360 or 450 parking spaces. That's more than the 279 combined parking spaces that we currently provide. That's just surface parking, right? That's 90 in the park and ride lot, 189 in the Playhouse lot. And I believe that, one of the things that if we do this parking study and we have the funds to do it, which is, the other big question, is hopefully telling us how much do we really need to build? How much would we want to build, not only to meet existing demand, but what kind of future demand, might there be? And giving us a sense of how we can utilize shared parking, because what I think is endemic of the district now is that when the Playhouse has a popular event, parking fills up really fast. When we do a really popular event in the district, Dumplings and Beer or Lunar New Year or Cinco de Mayo, parking fills up really fast, spills out over onto the residential districts, residential areas, and then it goes away, and then it's just empty, wasted space for the other, 80% of the time. And so, one of the things that we've learned with other projects is that different types of businesses have different levels, different peak hours for parking demand. And so that's something that we could take advantage of too, and in that way, perhaps also not need to replace. I mean, depending upon what the study says, tell us, what is the capacity that would be sort of a good level to build to, and then we can figure out how do we go about it. The Mission basketball courts is another site like that too, and I agree with Councilmember Harrington on this. Let's get creative, and I was speaking with Terry, sorry to call you out a little bit before the meeting, and I would love to have more conversations with the Archdiocese and see what would be something that would be mutually beneficial, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a sale. It can be some form of partnership. The things with these P3s that Vice Mayor Menchaca mentioned, in parking, for example, if the city contributes the land and then the developer builds the parking structure, then if there are parking fees charged, let's say like $2 for the first 2 hours, something like that, that revenue goes to the developer to recoup the costs, and then at some point there's a revenue split or whatever, maybe even title, the whole thing reverts back to the city. There's like a million different ways of being able to do it, but something like that could easily be, or not easily, but I mean, if the Archdiocese was open to it, I think it's something that we could explore with them as well, because I think that it would be an easy way to provide long-term, financial stability, security for both entities, both the mission and for the city, or even if it's just as a benefit for the district. So I think what I'm hearing is that, and I also agree that this, and I mentioned this throughout my State of the City address. Most of you weren't there, but shame on you. It was the most important speech of at least the month, or maybe that week at least. No, but a big theme of it was telling our story. Maybe many of you in the audience today don't even know that there's this convergence of the trails, I can by no means claim to be any expert on all the history, all the stories that we have to tell. 10 points for the person who can name name this reference, but there's nothing more powerful than a good story. And I think that that's the thing that we have here in San Gabriel in spades, whether it's from the mission and the district, or it's the authentic, other cultures and other layers of history that we have. These stories are what makes up, for me, is what makes the community of San Gabriel so special. And we need to do a better job of telling those stories. So the other thing too is then about using the wayfinding signage and so forth to be able to, but I think this has to be done in a very strategic way. I think that it's easy to get bogged down and mired into debates about the design and look and feel of things, but I'm not even as concerned about that. You can, you guys can make it. I would, in other words, I would let go of that myself and just focus on where are we going to place it? What is that thing going to do? What is that supposed to be? Is it supposed to be an Instagrammable moment? I was just like flipping through, and there's just a sign at the Santa Monica Pier that says Santa Monica, end of Route 66. It's like, it's not even pretty or anything. But this is where people take pictures and they post it online, and like Santa Monica will get like, a billion hits, just from this one silly kind of dumb sign. If you want to celebrate the end of Route 66, you can celebrate the convergence of three old trails that settled the West. So these are the kinds of things that I think we need to think about. How can we be strategic about it, and what the purpose is going to be. for these kinds of signages. You know, I think of other things like at the Japanese American National Museum in Little Tokyo, there's this giant cube. I have no idea what that thing means, but you know what? People take pictures in front of it and they post it and things like that. I'm not suggesting that we do that, but you know, I'm just saying that something that's unique but also helps to educate and raise awareness, to you know, give us identity, and because I think there's a sense among us all that we're proud of all of this, and yet we don't show it. You know, we're not showing it well enough anyway. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, you know, from that state of the city too, is I said, you know, I fully expect for the conversation on a lot of these issues to be ongoing, and I think that that's very, very true. Now that we have a lot of people here who are engaged, you know, I want to see you stay involved with the conversation so that we can continue to move forward in a collaborative process. The other thing that I also wanted to highlight from Vice Mayor Menchaca's comments, which I hadn't thought about, you know, until that moment, which is, I think the thing that is opportune is that a lot of different parties are willing to work together right now, whereas, you know, there wasn't this openness of conversation not always in the past. You know, not just the mission, but also the hospital, you know, various businesses, the development community. You know, Ken Lee is here, has sat through this whole thing. You know, so and not just them, but other developers too. To be honest, there's a lot of interest out there in the development world to do this project. The question is going to be, are we going to be able to find an intersection between what we want to see as a community, what we want to allow, and what we want to see as a community, and what a developer will want to do? Meaning that it obviously needs to pencil, it needs to, you know, make economic sense, but then also needs to sort of, you know, conform to their own sort of requirements and leanings in terms of what they want to build. So I'm gonna leave it at that, but I think I heard enough of a consensus about parking study. And of course, it's not something we could do in the current fiscal year. It's not been budgeted for, but it's something that we can consider for 2020, 2021, particularly if the aforementioned sales tax measure passes. And I'd like to take a poll too, because I didn't hear clearly if we, you know, as a council, we're just open to updating the Mission District specific plan. I mean, just that alone, and then maybe also about the signage, you know, retail signage as well as wayfinding signage, that kind of thing. You want to go ahead?
Sure. On the specific plan, I'm just looking at the cost. I mean, I'm open to making some changes, maybe some amendments that would be needed if we want to move forward, because I am also interested in issuing some RFPs, and hopefully, if it's true, we can get some of these in the RFP. They can pay for the parking, the replacement parking, or do part of the study, so we don't have to set that aside, you know, or wait till there's monies. And so I'm interested in those two areas, and of course what I call the low-hanging fruit, not only the urban design, starting with the wayfinding and the directional, but also the regular programming that they talked about in the study. I don't remember if it was in your presentation, but in the reading, all 108 pages, I thought it was interesting that, you know, it's a way to start bringing people in during the week, and I just never thought about that. I know clearly in the evenings we can be quite popular, but during the day, that's an area that would really help, because it just seems, as one of the owners told me the other day, it's just kind of dead. But if there's a possibility, and if it's not going to cost us a lot, you know, maybe just kind of relocating where we are right now, I would like to see that also.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Harrington?
Yeah, as far as the mission district plan, I mean, I'm open to it, but I don't think it's a priority simply because we have a lot of other things to spend our money on. That's because I think if we're going to do it, it needs to be holistic. I don't think we should be piecemealing that effort. So yeah, I'm open to it. I think it is an old document that could be updated. There's a lot that can be, obviously reused. There's some good design elements that really are that will stand the test of time. But as far as the district does, it has some quirks. I mean, the plan itself is when you go through it and you have to almost use a slide rule to figure out what you can build. I mean, I'm just like going, what? So yeah, it's not the easiest to read, but once you get it, it's kind of you get it. But from a developer standpoint, it leaves a lot to question. So yeah, I'm open to it, but I'm not sure where we're gonna get the money for that because it's probably not even on my top 15 things I'd like to do.
Okay. What about parking study?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's long overdue. I don't know what a study's going to give us. We know it's very short on parking. I'd rather see what are the ideas of getting more parking there, like how much the more the financial side of it. I can tell you anecdotally, I was there for 5 years with the business I was there every day there's a performance. That place, unless you're going to put in about 500 spots, I don't know what you're going to do. It really is that much. I mean, you can walk down every single street in the district and they're all full. And that includes the Mission the Mission parking lot, not just the Playhouse. Mm-hmm. It fills also, and I've seen it fill up by Smith Park. People walk from there. I've seen it go all the way down Broadway, depending how popular the show is. I've seen it go really far. So they go all the way up to past Las Tunas. I've seen people walking all the way down. All those streets fill. So yeah, we need parking.
Okay.
I would say you don't need to study that. We need to figure out how to build it.
And the signage?
Yeah, signage is always needed. I think we actually were starting a long time ago. I think Julie remembers this. We were starting a wayfinding, and it just we never could get the funding to do a citywide. I think that's vital. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay, thank you.
I certainly would be open to looking at the Mission District, but again, not a whole redo, but maybe there are specific parts that we need to update, and making sure that all those that need to be involved are involved in the conversation, like historic preservation, planning, etc. And then signage, yes, and parking at the right time.
Thank you. Okay, so does that give at least some sense of direction about where council is? And I think that not having Councilmember Leal here too is another component of this that we need to consider. We probably should revisit some of these conversations, a little bit later, maybe even after the new year or something like that. But go ahead. What you're gonna mention too?
Mayor, I think this has been a great discussion, and I think it's exactly what we were hoping to start off with tonight. I think Angelica started this evening by saying this is going to be a conversation starter, and I think that's been a consistent theme we've heard this evening. The intent was to get something in front of all of us and start that dialogue. I feel that we've gotten some clear direction from council on several things that we need to start exploring. And again, this will be the first of many conversations. I think the next few months would be a good time for us to start putting together some strategies, maybe start getting some cost estimates, putting together some information. And as we start budget discussions next year, also looking at what happens with a potential sales tax measure, looking at the overall financial health of our city. There's definitely a lot of things that we can start discussing, and I think we've gotten enough direction to start pursuing some of those cost estimates, starting the discussion or continuing the discussion with several of our stakeholders, and in the next few months continuing and definitely making sure that Councilmember Liao is part of that discussion as well. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. This has been a great discussion.
Okay, thank you. And there is actually, did you want to make some closing comments?
Okay.
There's also an item we do need to actually vote on for this, but go ahead.
Just real quickly, since we were talking, I was going to comment under City Council, but I think it's appropriate now. This weekend I did go to the dedication of the Washington School Bell, 151 years. And we all, meaning the current school board, and I'm a former school board member, learned so much. But that is a bell that they had initially built the school on Main and Vega, which, you know, at one time was all just orchards. And they moved it to Hermosa and Sierra Madre. Yeah, is it Sierra Madre? What's your street again?
San Marino.
San Marino. I'm sorry, San Marino. Anyway, but what was interesting is when they first built the school, it was given the award as the best school in the whole country. Then they demolished it, and then they were going to demolish the bell, and kind of like Back to the Future, save the bell, save the bell. So they actually saved it with pennies, literally. They brought it over to the new location and built the new school with, it was $1,200 to build the new school. But that type of history, I think we need to also think about San Gabriel Unified. There's some history there. And so I just thought I would share it as we're talking about, you know, we just have so many gems that we don't even know about.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you know, AECOM has done all this work, and I guess we, yeah, we haven't fully paid the bill yet. So there is a recommended action item number 3. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I'll move.
Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure we'll have more and more ongoing conversations about this with the community. Next item, please.
First reading of an ordinance amending Title III, Section 34 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code, Finance and Revenue. Presentation will be made by Management Specialist and Acting Finance Director Paula Chamberlain.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Before you tonight is the first reading of an ordinance amending Title III, Section 34 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code regarding finance and revenue. This is a non-urgency version of the Purchasing Code update that was updated by an urgency ordinance on September 17, 2019. The proposed ordinance includes all changes included in the urgency ordinance shown as a red line and strike-throughs in Exhibit A, as well as additional changes shown with gray highlighting. The most significant changes from the September 17th version include the ability for the city manager to designate a purchasing officer and a more concise description of open market purchases. Rather than adopt as recommended in the staff report, staff recommends that the City Council waive further reading, read by title only, and introduce ordinance number 657, amending Title III, Section 34 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code pertaining to claims and demands, purchasing procedures, and informal bidding procedures. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Paula, for keeping it short and sweet. Are there any questions or comments? Because we've already previously gone over most of this. Anyone? Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And maybe, Greg, may I ask about how long is this presentation for the next? I just wanted to take a poll, see if anybody needs a break or wants a break, or should we just power through? Okay, let's proceed. Next item, please.
Presentation on the Metro 710 Freeway Mobility Improvement Projects List. Presentation will be made by Public Works Director and City Engineer DeVink.
All right. Yes, it is. This is dedicated to the 3 citizens who stayed. Okay, so this presentation, Metro has released funds to various cities affected by the cancellation of constructing the 710 freeway. The majority of the money did go to the most effective agencies of Pasadena, Alhambra, and the giants around them of LA County and LA City, but we did fairly well, and I'm going to go through what was awarded to us right now. And so let's see, what do I need to do? There we go. Again with the animation. I like this one. Metro did a call for affected cities to submit potential projects, and San Gabriel submitted a bunch of projects, and all the cities around us did. They released funds picking projects in two phases. Round one, they awarded $515 million of funds, and in round two, they awarded another $512 million in funds. So we submitted 24 potential projects, and the requirements to qualify for their funding was that you must alleviate traffic congestion and improve traffic safety. I asked the director of Caltrans as well as the Metro program manager, can we please pave our streets? And they said no. The reason being is this cancellation of the freeway was never intended to subsidize what they felt were cities' maintenance responsibilities anyway. I did try to argue everything I could. Paving streets helps traffic and moves traffic better, but it didn't work. So, there we go. For our list of projects, Metro did approve 7 of them. 5 are intersection reconstruction projects. And I'm going to go through all 7, and it won't take long. And 2 were broader citywide traffic signal enhancements. We received of that pot of money $23 million, a commitment. It'll come over time, and we have to work with them for a payment plan. These funds are reimbursed, so we do have to come up with the money to seed the projects as we need it to go along, and they will reimburse with their funding commitments. So of the 7 projects, 5 of them being intersections, I can go through these fairly quickly because they are pretty similar. But we do have Valley and New, and they awarded $3.2 million for it. And what it does is it has a little right-of-way acquisition, and $511,000 of that $3.2 million is for right-of-way negotiations. And the right-of-way acquisitions in all these slides will be the red dashed line. But what this does is it adds a southbound right turn lane and east and westbound right turn pockets and an additional through lane on Valley and New. Going down Valley, we have Valley and Del Mar. Similar, it's a slightly bigger project with more funds, and it requires right-of-way acquisition of $277,000 was estimated, and it adds an eastbound through lane and a right turn lane with peak hour parking restrictions. What that means is to squeeze another lane on Valley during peak times, and probably it's the daytime hours, some parking would be eliminated, or the parking restricted hours. So at night, when the capacity is not needed, you can park on the street, and during peak rush hour, it's available for through traffic. Valley and San Gabriel, $4.4 million, similar things, more turning lanes, southbound, northbound, and eastbound right turn pockets, extending the third lane through with peak hour parking restrictions, and again, $462,000 of that is committed for right-of-way acquisition. Mission Drive in Las Tunas, $3.3 million. It does less geometry changes. There is some right-of-way acquisition. You can see in the top left a red dashed line. That will accommodate another right turn pocket on the southbound, but it also will incorporate protective phases in the traffic signals, so there will be green arrows to get more cars in the turning opportunity, and because that's an intersection that's got quite a heavy congestion problem right now. This is the weirdest one of the bunch. We have 2 intersections right next to each other, and it's problematic when you do that. So this was submitted, and they agreed that this would be a helpful one. So this creates one intersection of Marshall crossing San Gabriel. So it's safer, more traffic capacity will get through, but it does end up with this quirky shape. All of these were designed by a consultant we hired to help us create an application package, and none of these are necessarily a final plan, and I've already experienced through Metro, they're open to revisions and changes, and so if we came up with a similar concept or that did the same thing, this might not ultimately end up with what you see, but they approved it in concept, they funded it, we can go forward with design and determine maybe this is the smartest solution, maybe it's not. Offhand, it certainly looks really quirky to me. So this has right-of-way acquisition of $718,000 of that $4.9 million, and what it does is what I just said, realigns it and changes the turning lanes. Now the non-intersection projects that they funded is, this one's fairly large, and what it does, this map is rotated. That's how it was submitted to fit on the application better, but it's actually Valley on the left that's running up and down, and the 10 freeway below it, so turn your head sideways. This project syncs the traffic signals so we can control the timing, and what it essentially will be, the majority of the work will be running fiber optics down these streets and syncing the traffic signals so they communicate to each other to get better flow up and down the entire corridors of San Gabriel and Valley. We're going to look into this, and like everything I try and do, try and figure out what's the most cost-effective way to make this happen, and can I take that $3.1 million and maybe squeeze Del Mar or Las Tunas into it as well. It'd be so great if we could stretch this and get fiber to much more signals. So we'll look into how we can do this the smartest, most efficient way. And again, I really do believe Metro is open to not constricting us to the exact scope we've applied for. No, that's just what I just said. Here is a project that it was approved in round one, and I'm not a huge fan of it, but they picked it as one of our many projects. And what this is a reversible lane between the freeway and Valley on San Gabriel. So what is currently a center lane where cars pull in and have the freedom to make left turns and not block up the street at non-signalized intersections, we propose to make it one way in the morning and another way in the evening, all controlled with red and green lights. And we still have driver behaviors that aren't going to be used to it. They're still going to want to make lefts where they want to make lefts. I was not really a huge fan of this project, and so what I did, in my time here, I've experienced some power outages, some planned by Edison, some just by wind and a pole fell over. And in responding to that, which Public Works always does, is I learned that a lot of our signals don't even have battery backups. They go dark. And I went out there and I actually witnessed cars driving through signalized intersections like there was no stop sign, no nothing. They just fly through. And we have had accidents. In my time here, we've had accidents at out intersections. So in my mind, I think it's pretty critical that we upgrade our signals, at least to batteries, but there's so much more we can do. And we quickly, between round 1 and 2, whipped out another project asking for money to upgrade our signals. And so they agreed to take this one out and put in this for the same amount of money. So we now have a $700,000 budget to put in, well, I'll click it. Video detection, wireless communications, battery backups, repair the malfunctioning loop detectors and clocks, and upgrade our controllers. And this is for 30 signals throughout the city. I believe we have a total of around 40, but some of them are very new, like what the Great Trench put in, and they already have top-of-the-line controllers. They have video detection, but 30 of them don't. So you can kind of see, again, the map is rotated, but you can see we really have 4 main corridors, not really counting the new exit. But ultimately, if we could get them to communicate via fiber optics, stretching our dollars if we can figure out how, and we can really have a first-rate traffic signal system throughout the city. with monitoring and just it's certainly going to help, and the battery backups, because I'm really terrified when these things go out and I watch people ignore them. That's really very dangerous. So what is next? So those are the 7 projects that were approved. I'm going to get together engineering and maintenance staff, the staff that actually goes out and services the controller cabinets and signals, and we're going to look at this as a whole, because all of these projects are signal related. Even the intersection ones will have signal work. So we're going to look at how they tie to each other. We're going to look at their relation to other CIP projects where we're going to pave and such, or do sewer projects. We're going to look at how they relate to private development. One of these major rebuild intersections is at the Curio Hotel corner. So we have to consider what do we do to each other. We're going to look at how we bundle these. We have 5 intersection projects. Do we give them all to one consultant, or do we divvy it up, or what's the smartest way to approach this over time? Do we do it all at once? Do we stagger them? So we're going to evaluate all those things. How do we phase the work? Because construction irritates everybody, and I imagine on Valley more than anywhere else, it's going to irritate people when we tear up the street. We also are looking into some grant funding projects where we have one right now where we're considering applying for a grant that will sort of do a streetscape to Valley with the angle of stormwater infiltration. So we might take the whole parking lane for certain segments, certain blocks, change them out to permeable pavers. What that does is it makes the streets look a bit nicer, but it also handles part of our paving problem. One reason we focused on so many intersection projects is we're going to try and stretch the scope of asphalt work. We need to go way back and repave, 100 feet to get the loops in place or whatever we messed up with the alignment. So we really are doing our best to get as much pavement out of these projects as possible. We know that's a desperate need, and Valley's really bad, and so this is very helpful in that. And then when we ultimately finish the intersections and finish maybe a permeable parking lanes or islands with trees and such, our cost to actually go back and pave Valley now is half, because it's already half done. That's kind of one of the thought processes in all this. And we'll evaluate mitigating public impact, because this will be traumatic, tearing up the streets. We will be executing funding agreements with Metro. They actually want us to plan out fund distributions over 7 years. I think we'll do this sooner than 7 years, but that's how they foresee a lot of these projects. We'll enter design contracts. We'll do what we can in-house. I think a lot of the signal work we will try to minimize and design some of it ourselves and spec the cabinets we want. Then we will enter construction contracts, and we will close out the project and close out the funding and be done with it all. All my slides have fallen over like a domino for a reason. I'm continuing the theme. So that actually runs automatically on my computer. Why is that not going? Uh-oh. Can we go back? It's the finale. It's what we've all been waiting for. I'm moving? Okay, I'll stop moving. Last slide. Okay. Well, you can hit play. That'll work too. That's one. That I just found was funny. It's quick. So that's curb and gutter work somewhere. It works. It does work. It's very impressive. But the other slide is the domino one. So play the other one. It's a long wall they're building. But they're building a block wall right here, and these people with all their free time figured out perfect spacing of the capstone for a masonry block wall. And this does exactly what you'd think, but they've already put mortar on these bricks. And so I apologize for the wall being a bit long, but part 2 of this domino story is really quite impressive. So it goes to the end. Everyone's holding their breath.
Whoa.
It just comes right back. And Every block is perfectly set.
How do they do that?
So there you go. That's my version of magic. So if you have questions, I'm standing here.
Okay.
So.
Any questions? Yes.
Real
Vice
quick.
Mayor. Yeah.
First of all, I think this is the second or third time you're always at the end, and your information, your slideshow are always so well done. So I propose that you be in the front, so there's a bigger audience to appreciate the work that you're doing. So.
Now I'll point out you did say that at my last presentation.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry, I couldn't remember.
That's fine.
Is that a motion or no?
Yeah, I'm ready to make that motion. But real quick, so it was Valley where some of the parking is going to be taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way of getting monies to build a parking structure on Valley? I know that's been a conversation at some point.
One of our submitted projects was a garage, and they didn't award it to us. Some other cities did. I think Pasadena might have got a garage. I'm not sure. Monterey Park. Okay.
That's because you can connect the two, obviously, but
yeah, the
that's
kind of
unfortunate.
I mean, a garage would be helpful, but I think in the grand vision of investing, garages are expensive, and you buy the land and you build your expensive structure, and then it kind of only serves a block or so each way. Otherwise, people will just park closer to where they want to go. And these corridors of Valley and San Gabriel and Las Tunas are long. To really serve them with garages, you probably need several on each street to really effectively do the street.
Because we're going to have to find a place for these cars. They have to move somewhere.
That is the downside of losing some parking. And again, these are tentative, submitted ideas. We don't have to do exactly what they said. I think we have to meet the intent of what we proposed. And if the city finds it not acceptable to lose one parking space, maybe we add all those turning lanes, but not the extra through lane.
Well, because I believe we went to a meeting, Mayor Pooh and I think it begins as far as Monterey Park, then Alhambra. So we would kind of interfere with the flow if we wouldn't, use that area as a road. I mean, that was the intent, is my understanding. That Monterey Park and Alhambra, we're going to add that extra lane by taking away the parking. I thought we had gone to a meeting where they were discussing that. So it is important that all the cities are in agreement, because otherwise, it kind of forfeits the purpose.
If another city has 3 lanes entering our 2-lane city, it will cause a bit of a jam up on their side. But if we just leave the 2 lanes we have today, the turning lanes and maybe signal improvements will help, but we'll still have traffic jams on Valley similar to today. So
Okay.
it's a very busy corridor.
Yeah, it really is.
And it probably would have been alleviated somewhat if the 710 happened. So they acknowledge we got some spillover result of not having that 710 connection. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to go back to that one about the project number 5, where it's the Marshall-San Gabriel intersection. Why is there a cul-de-sac there?
Well, you can go back to it, but one reason is typically, in my experience, the fire department, they need to be able to turn around a truck. I don't know. It is a very bizarre looking thing, and we do need access to that business. So if the street doesn't
You mean
extend
the business south of it?
Yes. I'm
Is that
not
like
sure what
Carl's
it is.
Jr. or something? Is it? It's Carl's Jr. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it would be highly undesirable to move their driveway onto the busy street. But again, we maybe could. We might be able to work with them or tweak the design and maybe not have the cul-de-sac at all and put their driveway on the busy street and sell that piece of land.
What's currently there?
Well, that actually is an aerial photograph with the street drawn over it, so it looks like parking is generally there.
On the east, westbound, will actually just intersects with San Gabriel? That's right. I see.
That's that staggered street right there by the church.
Yeah.
Marshall on top and then Marshall on the bottom.
Yeah.
That weird intersection right
Yeah.
there.
Okay. All right, yeah.
It is strange, and our final plan may not look exactly like this. I can't say today. This is what we applied for, and they agreed to fund it. So.
I encourage you to, come up with a better solution. Or I like the idea of lining up the intersection. Of course, that makes perfect sense. But this seems like a lot of wasted square footage. And an odd design.
We've already managed to sneak one project substitution.
Right.
If this ultimately is undesirable to us in the end, maybe they would agree to swap it with something else. I don't know. So.
Well, I mean, aligning the intersection is not a bad idea. It's just that.
Part of the application package for all these intersections came up with accident counts, and so, this is a place of accidents. Having two adjacent intersections, it leads to more cars getting T-boned or rear-ended or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it is a safety enhancement, but more it's a capacity enhancement to have one intersection instead of two.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Next item, please. It's public comment again. Do we need to? Well, are there any members of the public who would like to address the council? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And next is City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just one quick item for you. Senator Rubio sponsored SB 751 that was recently signed by the governor. And what that does is allows the COG to create the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. And just taken straight from the legislation, the purpose of that trust is to receive public and private funds to finance homeless and affordable housing projects. So the COG is working on an effort to actually creating the bylaws of what that trust would be and how the participation would happen and what the cost and what the rules would be. They have asked the city managers and staff to sit on a working group to create those bylaws. We're not committed to anything. We'll be bringing something back to the COG board for approval and then to the individual cities for approval. But before Armene and I spend staff time, we're going to tag team and go back and forth on attending these meetings. But before we spend staff time, I just wanted to make sure that the council wasn't so adverse to the idea that we're wasting time if we come to the end and it's just not within our goals and strategy. I do think it fits within our goals of creating affordable housing and meeting the needs of the homeless, so I don't think I was getting too far out there, but I just wanted to make sure that that's not something that the council's opposed to.
No, I don't know.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
That was it? Okay. And actually, I was going to mention this, but I think it would be helpful for us on the council to at some point maybe get an update on all of the housing bills, summary on all the housing bills that have just been signed by the governor. Maybe not all, I mean, there's a lot, but the most relevant ones for us here is from a planning perspective. And as has been mentioned, actually the movement is in addressing the housing crisis is to stimulate and encourage building housing. And that does also mean densifying even R1 neighborhoods. So an update as to whether or not, our recently amended ADU ordinance needs to be further amended. That's, a very directly relevant piece for us. So at some point, we can maybe have an item for that. And I think it would be interesting for the community too, because we have, we have what do we call it, rent control, and caps on that, and all those things which all actually affect the community.
Doesn't the COG too still have their legislative arm of that they were keeping track of all these bills?
There
It
is.
might be helpful.
Absolutely. We can pass that along and have a presentation if you'd like.
Probably the League of Cities, too.
League does as well, but yeah. Okay. Council comments and conference meeting reports. Vice Mayor Machaca.
I want to thank everyone who attended the La Casa Gala last week. All my colleagues who were there, 100%, staff, city manager, so really appreciate it. Second, I went to a neighborhood watch, and there was great concern about the mosquitoes, and so I was able to provide some information, but I noticed that our website didn't have anything, or I tried to do a search and I couldn't find anything. And we have a great resource, the San Gabriel Valley mosquito vector. I can never remember the name exactly, but I would just suggest that we put something on our website to provide just resources, and which they have some wonderful ones, that a brochure, and they have one-page handouts that really were appreciated by the residents. So that was all.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Costanzo.
And I know Jonathan had it on our website before, and I appreciated it. I do have a flyer, speaking of mosquitoes. Senator Portantino is having something this weekend regarding mosquitoes and the vector control districts. I know it's late notice, but it is on Saturday if anybody's interested. And it is being held at PCC, the Jack Scott Room, from 2 to 4. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. And I did attend the La Casa fundraiser. It was a great event. Thank you for putting it on. It's fun. I looked this way. Also on the 25th, remember the AYC fundraiser is coming up as well. So I encourage everybody to attend that. Should be fun as well, and it's for a great cause. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, both of those events I concur with. The La Casa Dinner was really nice. Having one of our native daughters, Kim Baldonado, come and MC it was a special treat. And then AYC coming up. The city is actually being honored, so I really encourage as many city employees as possible to attend the dinner, so we can all share in it. Because I actually I'm planning on calling everybody up to the stage so that we can all take part in the moment. The only thing that I have to report is that the League of California Cities Conference starts tomorrow in Long Beach, and I'll be attending through Friday, and we'll bring a report back at the next meeting. That's it. So is that those are all of the things, and I guess the next regular City Council meeting will be on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. here in the Council Chambers. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.